Hey everyone, it's TTL back with another video, and today we're going to be taking a look at the newly refreshed versions of the Coolermaster NR200Ps. Now I say newly refreshed because they did launch last year, but because of the pandemic there was very few samples for the press, people like me, and then there was very little that actually managed to get sold out. And they were getting, well, I say get sold out, they were getting sold out because there just wasn't many around. There was manufacturing delays, there was shipping delays, it all kind of went against it. So they've refreshed it with 4 new funky colours, and I finally managed to get my hands on one because this is the first time I've seen one. Now for your £100, it sounds expensive because it is quite a small and compact case. It's only meant for an ITX board. But I am going to show you the configurations that you can get in, because there's lots of ways that you can change components and move stuff around and have things in different places. It actually does an awful lot for your £100, including it does still come with a secondary changeable tempered glass side panel. So get yourself comfy, because this little puppy has won me over. And as always with one of my reviews, we all start at the top and the front. And I'm just going to give it a little tilt, because you get a couple of USB 3s there. You get a combined headphone and microphone, power switch with a light around it, and then you also get the reset switch here. It's actually kind of simple. And also what you can do, and you do have to be a bit brave, bearing in mind I was doing that from the back and I hadn't taken the sides off or anything, but they do just pop off. And that is your meshed panel on the roof. I'm not entirely sure about the strip down the side, I'm going to be completely honest, but I suppose it does break things up a little bit. I've obviously got the turquoise with the white, and it is white detailing inside, but it is meshed. And then there are a couple of 120mm fan mounts, and they do have anti-vibrational dampers. I'll talk to you about some of the accessories and stuff in a minute anyway, but it does just all clip down, and it goes on as easily, as quickly and as easily as it goes off. And then the side panel's actually really cool as well, because you do just pop them off, and it's actually, they can go on either side as well. Really nice and simple, but there's a fair amount of weight to it, and you do get the mesh on the other side. But the other bit to kind of remember that I did say to you about before is you can put a tempered glass side panel on it as well. And this is, it comes with everything. And saying about comes with everything, because you'll see in a minute when we get into the case, I was thinking to myself about things that it would need, and then I opened the accessories box, and in the accessories box you get a small riser cable if you want to have the graphics card up on the side, which I'll show you in a minute. And they also give you a couple of 120mm fans as well, because I genuinely thought it was just going to be completely empty. But riser cable and 220mm white fans, I was like, oh, okay, they're surprising me now. Now, that is your side panel, but we're going to continue on around the case. I think we'll reset the camera. So the front panel, I was expecting it to be plastic. It's metal as well. It's just steel. I suppose with the fact that it is steel means it makes things a little bit easier with the colour matching. It's only really that plastic panel at the top that's different. The colours are fairly close. You'd have to be very picky, kind of like me, to pick between them. But metal front panel, like I said, it's nice and sturdy. It actually makes the whole thing feel really nice. And small cases do have the possibility of feeling pretty flimsy. This one doesn't. You can put a pump here, and it actually has pump stamped in it, but you can also pop a couple of 2.5-inch drives either side. Although, to be fair, with the amount of room that you get in the front of the side panel, and this isn't needed for airflow, you could easily put them this side and have them kind of out the way and managing to keep the rig tidy. I will talk to you about the inside and what we can do on the inside in a minute, but I'm trying to work my way around. Again, round the back comes with the mesh panel. There's a lot of open areas in the case, so it's going to be good for kind of getting airflow in and around. The power supply section here SFX only. Now, Coolermaster did send me, and it's down on the side, I'm walking around like an idiot, but they did send me one of their new VSFX Golds. 10-year warranty, 80 plus gold, 15% fanless. So lots of options for that if you did want this. With an 850 watt power supply, it's going to power pretty much every graphics card out there. And I need to put the trolley face out. Probably won't blow up. But I'm not going to make a clickbait video about that and jump on the bandwagon. Shot fired. Anyway, so round the back here, there isn't really a lot of room for cables. You could put some fan cables around there if you wanted, but anything major like 8-pin cables and stuff like that, you're going to have to go pretty careful. I think you're probably going to end up having to put them round in the meaty side of the case. Kind of goes against it a little bit, but if they started adding 10 centimetres or 5 centimetres here or there to allow for all the cables, it would have ended up massive. So it's kind of one of those ones where you have to kind of suck it and see. Now I'm looking for my screwdriver because here you can see you have the a mount in the side. You can put 120mm and 140mm fans in the side if you wanted. Now, I personally, flipping it round so that we can get a different view, would suggest that that side panel would be if you wanted to use an AIO. Now, there are other options because I have a very funky Alpenfon 120mm cooler here. I'm not sure whether it will turn around, it won't. But you could get that in there, and I'm going to show you could get that in there. But I would suggest that it would be for if you wanted to put a side mount or AIO in there. You could have the AIO sucking from inside of the case and blowing out, and I'm just about to remove it just like you guys can at home. So if you wanted to go AIO to keep your CPU temps down, you could. If you go AIO though, that does obviously mean, as I'll show you in a minute, the side mount graphics card option will be mute and you'll only be able to use it in the normal spot. You can get pretty much most 120mm coolers inside the case. This Alpenfon does actually let you, amazingly, even though it looks like it pops over the side, does actually let you close the case door. I'm just going to put it around the other side. Make sure I've got it around the wrong way. Dipstick. So it will actually let you close the door. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to show you it, was because it doesn't look like it would fit, but it will. Now, you are going to have to go careful with the sizes of these things as I look around for my tape measure, because it's one of those ones where it's kind of a bit hit and miss. But 160mm is what they're going to say, but I can tell you that that Alpenfon does fit, and there is a Be Quiet 120mm cooler that comes in white. That will also fit as well, because I have had both of them in there. Now you can see that's a massive tower, and it's going to depend on which way you want to swing with your cooling, because like I said, you can fit AIOs in the side. But the other thing is to talk about the possibilities with graphics cards. It's a tight fit. Now this is a Power Color 6700 XT Hellhound. Those of you with the eagle eye will notice the box is missing in the background because it's now in the case. And I was lucky enough to keep hold of this when they sent it to me for review before, and I obviously kept hold of it because I like white stuff, and I knew there's going to be days where I needed it to show off something like this. Now, what I will say is if you have a look around the back of the case, it is wider than the expansion slots, which means it pokes out a bit. And that is going to cause you some issues if you end up with like massive AIOs and stuff in the side. I will show you where your AIO will fit if you do end up going down that route. I mean, you can just about get away with it, but you do just need to think to yourself, like fans and stuff, it's all going to be very, very tight. The other thing is if you have it exhausting out, so sucking air from inside and getting it outside of the case, that it's going to be sucking all the hot air off of this. I do personally think that the AIO route, because it needs the mesh on the side, is probably the route that I would advise against if you want to be looking at all your sexy hardware, because I think that graphics card and an air cooler like this is going to look fat, because that is a sexy colour combo for me, and I really like it, to the point where if you're wondering why I've not fitted the AIO, the mounts, because the amount of times I have to get it in and out to be able to show you stuff, it was actually getting to the point that was driving me nuts. So just wanted to hold it to show you. But it did make me want to build this up, not just for kind of my own sake, rather than actually using it, because it's very, very pretty. But because of the review, I've had stuff in and out of here so much, I've taken the easy route. But the other thing that I did want to show you, because of big Gert graphics card, is once you have your SFX in there, it is going to get tight with room. Now you've only really got to get a 24-pin cable out, which comes here. Your 8-pin on mine is here, but some motherboards will be up in the top corner where you kind of want it. So you are going to have to route it around, and then you're going to have to pop some cables out and around for this. You could do it tidily. Oh, sorry, if I show you. You could get the 8 pins out and around and put them underneath. So there's ways that you can make things nice and tidy. The other thing that I will say, based on, you can put 120mm and 140mm fans in the bottom, which is also, again, dust filtered, colour coded, it's all lovely. You can see that you can see the fans straight away in the bottom, but I would personally experiment when you get it at home, because it's all going to depend on, it's okay me doing a test for you now and telling you how it comes out, but if you have a single fan blower, which would probably be better for most configs, if you have a single blower fan that goes outside, then you'd want a fan kind of underneath it to help kind of nestle it in. But with this, you could probably get away with putting the 220mm in the side. And you've also got the option of having them in the roof. Now, there are a lot of configurations, and just take an hour for yourself, maybe a couple of hours one weekend, you know what I mean, when you're bored, and just move the fans around. Do I want one in the bottom? Do I want an exhaust in the top? So in the bottom, definitely in the bottom because of feeding the graphics card. Definitely out through the top. You can also add fans here, should you wish, but I would personally suggest, based on the config with this case where there's big mesh in the bottom, big mesh in the roof, literally in the bottom, out the top. You could just fit 2 in the bottom, 2 in the roof, have done with it, but then this might get a little bit confused, and I think I personally would probably end up having maybe 1 or 2 in the bottom, 1 in the roof, the CPU blowing out the back. Now the other option that we've got requires me to take that graphics card out again, move it, because then I need to talk to you about more CPU cooler options. And it's definitely easier for me to show you visually. And hey, this is YouTube, it's videos. Okay, now this is your other graphics card option, and I've only got one screw in case someone starts saying about Holy Droop, Batman and all of that sort of stuff. But this is kind of the quirky route, and it could also be the Brave Pill route. But the first thing that you have to kind of make peace with is, if you run this, I would personally say only run the mesh. And I think it would be a bit of a shame. I'm very much in favour of the tempered glass on this little case. I think it looks the nuts. Now, there is breathing room down the side, and with enough copious amounts of airflow, it would be doable. It's not going to suffocate. There is a good amount of room, but you're going to have to make sure that it is just a dual slot cooler. Any more than a dual slot graphics card, no glass whatsoever, don't even bother, it will just suffocate. As it is now, it will run hotter than it did in the bottom, but the fans should cope. Now, the reason why I wanted to put it in, and it's going to be a very brutal way of putting it in because I know the graphics card's going to move around like Billy-O. In fact, because I know it is going to move around like Billy-O, let's put that in there to give it a bit of support. Because what I did want to talk to you guys about was this. Now that is your clearance. Now in my infinite wisdom, because I've moved and used that, it means, right, I need this. So between the motherboard and the graphics card, you have 100mm of room. So if you're going to go air cooling, then you're going to be using a downdraft cooler, probably small ITX one. There's Noctua one, there's a couple of Be Quiet. There are other ones, but anyway. So it will be a relatively medium slimline downdraft cooler with the fan pointing at the board. But the thing you do need to remember at this point is it's going to be sucking air straight off the back of a graphics card. So I would personally say an absolute no. My only option for this would be my advice to you guys, would be if you go this route, then you are going to need to put 120, so 240 or a 280 radiator in the bottom, but for an AIO. So then you have the AIO unit coming up and the rads in the bottom. Now there is going to be a lot of YouTubers that are going to go absolutely crazy about that because of air bubbles and all that sort of stuff. So you do need to take that with a pinch of salt. It's just the only possible option in reality with it this way around. Or you could take the brave pill and go dedicated water cooling, because you can still have a radiator in the bottom, got room for the block, and you could put a slimline pump and stuff around. But this is why I said I would personally prefer to have the graphics card in what I would call the generic position here, and then that does give you the option of like bigger air coolers. And the one thing I will say, I keep saying that today, so it's not the one thing, but I'm not going to suggest using the top for an AIO, and I'll explain to you why now. With the case the right way up and that graphics card back in that slot again, looking at my sister's car caricature in the background, there is a maximum of 50mm between the top of the power supply cover and the roof. But what we do need to think about is we also need to clip the power supply cable in, and you're also going to have memory in very short distance. So if we go from the memory slot, there is just over 30mm, almost 35mm of room. So if you remember that a fan is 25mm thick, that means if you do put fans in the roof, and I would suggest that you did, when you plonk it on, 25mm of room isn't going to be far off the top of the motherboard. So I would suggest that there's not really enough room for anything else. And with the fan placements being fixed and very close to the back of the board, because they are not offset or anything like that, if you look up, you can see that they are very, very close to the board. And it all just gets kind of complicated because, like I said, they are not offset. They are not, I'm not going to say radiator friendly, because in reality, even if they were offset, there's just so little room in the case that you would just run into issues. So I think that way for your graphics card, lovely. Maybe a fan in the bottom, a nice air cooler, or if you did want to, and it would be very touch and go, and I don't really like 120mm single fan AIOs, but you could play around with maybe one here and then trying to fit it in depending on your power supply kind of fitment. But I personally don't think it's going to fit. I mean, there's options there, but you may have to get handy with the Dremel. The only other option, talking about Dremels, and because I have put it that way, is maybe utilising this panel space in the front, and there's not a great deal of room there. So I don't think you're going to get two 120s, but there is an outside possibility as he scrabbles in the background for you to kind of go that route. But even then, there's enough room for a fan there maybe. Let's have a look. See, total amount of room up to the end of my graphics card is 50mm on the button. So a fan and then a very skinny rad, unless you end up with a shorter graphics card. Mine's 310mm. it is actually kind of long. So if you had a shorter one, you may be able to mod it in. But again, then you start running into problems with power supplies. And I know I'm waffling, but I'm trying to give you guys some idea that I'm trying not to be negative about it because I love it, but I'm also trying to show you that the options are fairly limited. So I think this way is best. Bit of air cooling, bit of air intake in the bottom to help move things along. Fans out the roof to get the heat out of it, and then I think you found the sweet spot. Okay then, I don't want that to sound like I was being negative. I was just trying to cover as many bases as possible and also explain my thought process in that I think that's probably the best way to have your graphics card. Now, it does come with that glass panel in there, a couple of fans and your riser card if you wanted it. Although with the riser card, I think that's probably going to complicate your CPU cooling possibilities. But, you know, it is there. But obviously, if you put it up on the side, you are going to need this. Now, I thought £100 was expensive when I first saw it. But I didn't look in the box and see the extra fans and the riser cable. So I'm actually it's won me over. I do think it does end up being relatively limited. But at the same time, it's not... I know it's big for an ITX case, but it kind of... Pardon me. It's big for an ITX case, but it does allow you to pack some fairly big hardware in there. It's probably half the size of a normal ATX case footprint-wise, much shorter. It would fit in many other places. I love this kind of, it's called turquoise, but it just makes me think about being on holiday, and it's like a really nice, fresh, summery turquoise colour. I love the colour. I'm actually really glad I picked this and not one of the other ones. And I also think it kind of straddles the difference between it being a pink or a blue. I don't want to say boy or girl because that's not necessarily fair and we end up running into lots of issues with it being stereotypes and stuff like that. But I think it straddles that kind of feel really nicely. I would really like to see this in a nice funky room. Now, as I've said, you can get big graphics cards in there. It's £100. You do have to be careful with your hardware choices. But I love it. I actually now think it's really good value for money. And that's why I am going to give it the OC3D Value for Money Award, but I actually really like the aesthetics as well. It's not overdone, it's simple, but it works. So I'm going to give it extreme aesthetics as well, because extreme aesthetics doesn't have to be some big angular thing with like lights and glass and no actual use. This thing comes with your dust filters, you've got cooling options, it's a funky colour, you can buy other funky colours. They've teamed the colours up all really nicely, and the fact that that turquoise goes so well with the white then means that you can go crazy looking at other kind of white parts. I think the only thing that I would personally end up doing would be adding some strategic white LEDs around inside to light up my hardware, and I think you could turn this into a little showstopper, and it's big enough or small enough that you could just pick it up, take it to work, take it to your girlfriend's house, or even when we're allowed to be in the same room together again, head off to a LAN with it, and it will stand out in that big hall because it's small but it's still really funky. Now, I do know that Davido Libido is going to get one of these and do an orange and a white one. So maybe me and Davido Libido need to do kind of an orange and white and a turquoise and white face-off. Mainly because I just want an excuse to go for a beer with Dave, because I miss him like a hole in the head. Anyway, it's a cracking case, double award winner. I really like it. Positive Logan. Nice to have had you around. This has been another video with the tiniest one out. Ding! Love you, sis.